What's there? This stone was incredibly valuable. Renato could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. Yes, that was it. Pirouette, slash, parry, dodge. Renato had never done such good work in a fight. He wished the poets were along to sing of his exploits for his old age. Maybe he wouldn't have to kill Zenobia. Maybe he could defeat her and take her prisoner. Then he could turn the tide against the Emperor. If she wasn't crowned princess, once this was all over, she'd have more time for him, right? Once, he'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. Have you ever felt you were just going round in circles? Bernardo felt like that. Soon, he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. Now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? By some miracle, Renato fought his way to the Emperor's ship. He was exhausted, bleeding, but he'd found the strength to reject the stone. Zenobia came out of the ship. "Renato!" she shouted, and then she fell down and died. Lapino was behind her, wielding a sword that seemed to suck all the light out of the sun. "You idiot! You threw the stone away!" cried Lapino. "You said it was evil." "It hates sanctimonious prigs like you," laughed Lapino. "We're having a grand old time." Renato turned and ran. But no matter where he ran, Lapino jumped in front of him until Renato was cornered. That boy could hop. "You wouldn't do this to an old friend, would you?" cried Renato. "You mean this?" said Lapino, as he slid the sword into Renato's guts. "Damn it! Again?" Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert, as tempting as it was to explore ancient mysteries. There was a war going on. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? The Third had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued?
No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper?
Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship.
Two eyes good. One eye dead.
He hadn't noticed that path before. That had been his mistake before, trusting his old friend Lapino, who'd been through so many battles with him and shared so many heartaches, who he'd rescued so many times. What was up with that guy anyway?
The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? These things really slice like ham. Wasn't making a dent in those shields. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renato. Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. See? That wasn't so hard. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. how was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist, but first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart, a core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
He looked up at the old trees around him. They were so big and so old. They'd been there before he was born, and they'd be there after he'd passed into legend. Was he confronting his own unimportance? What had got into him? He was no philosopher. Anyway, who cares? He was plenty important. He was a hero, and soon he'd prove it.
Bernardo had a lot of crafting materials. Now all he needed was a crafting bench. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
that go to? There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? Renato was dead tired. Then he was just dead. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. Maybe Lapino wasn't such a good friend. Yeah, that made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Well, of course. If you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, he could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective.
Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket. Sometimes, Renata really hated inanimate objects. If only he had some way to break the ice. Or convince it he was a friend. A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind Emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the Emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk.
Renato had found his game changer. He would ignore all distractions and focus on the Sky Ripper. You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it? Luckily, there was a bench right here.
This sword from the frigid north was really useful for making popsicles and birdsicles.
Energy steers. Easy to dodge, but boy did they sting if you didn't pay attention. There were stickers all over the platform for really hot lady foxes, with pictures and addresses and everything.
Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed.
Irving still believes in string theory. At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. and some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him, and then he would win the final battle.
Maybe it was the cold, but after a few steps, Renado's optimism started to slump.
What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renado dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of.
I need more materials, thought Renado. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods?
In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus. Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. The Emperor! Caught the ravens. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calveras would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper. And then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. I never get tired of doing that, thought Renato. So, who's your next of kin? Just wondering. Were really very well made, weren't they? Meat. Renato felt a little better. This was much easier than free climbing.
Ice walls only let you through if they knew you were cool.
He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? One small step for a fox, he thought.